Okay, certainly Amazon has decided to split up the release of all of the secret level episodes in a very specific way for a very specific reason. Like, they certainly saved the best for last, right? You guys did that, right?
So, what was this all about?
Yeah, if you're tuning in and watching this and you don't know what Secret Level is, it's a new anthology series, an animated anthology series, all based on different video game properties. And now, the first 8 episodes have already been released, and now this is a video covering over the second release, or the second half of Secret Level. And now I already talked about the first 8 episodes in another video, so make sure to go check that out if you're interested in my review for each one of those episodes. I didn't know if I was going to do this video. I didn't know if I was going to care enough to do so, because I covered the Warhammer one. That's the one I was really most excited about. I did the Armored Core one and loved that one. I was like, okay, the ones that I was the most interested in, I saw. I'm good. Let's see if the second half or the second release is as exciting or worth a video. And I think it's really interesting because these episodes, there's a lot to discuss about them, but maybe not so much in the way that we discussed the first 8 episodes. But like the first video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each individual episode, tell you my thoughts of them, and I'm going to give them a episode rating score, so what I overall think of the episode, and then also what the series potential score will be. So the possibility or how well that show or that property could work as a series. And so we'll have that coming up. And so let's hop straight into the first episode.
I don't need luck.
Yeah, so the Outer Worlds episode is a success across the board, from nailing the Outer Worlds goofy and dark tone, as well as its like hyper corporate vintage sci-fi aesthetic and world. It's also got just incredible voice acting and really great animation. It's a really stunning piece of work. My favorite thing about it, man, is probably that it tells a full story, but with real charm and real sincerity. It's not a bunch of exposition. It's just presenting to you a full story, kind of from beginning to end, and it does a really wonderful job of doing that. And once again, it's so charming and sweet. Now, I know some of the biggest complaints in writing today, or modern writing, is the constant jokes and constant quips. And now here's the thing, jokes are great. Things being funny and lighthearted are great, but they don't have to just be what Disney has sort of done in a lot of their content with it, whether it be Marvel or Star Wars. Is all of that has been sarcastic or insincere. All the comedy from this Outer Worlds episode comes from a very charming, very heartwarming kind of place, and it's a little slapsticky, but it's really good. It's really good. I actually think that this episode might be the best episode of Secret Level. Now, as a Warhammer fan, I think that the Warhammer episode is a masterpiece. Like, it's very good, and it's the thing that I came into Secret Level excited for, and it is probably going to be the thing that I'm walking away from and being like, okay, I just need more. I need more Titus, bro. Give me more Titus. But I think the Outer Worlds episode is the most watchable, the most accessible to anybody. You don't have to know anything about the games, or even know that there is a game connected to it for it to be enjoyable. It is a watchable, complete episode. Now, you could easily expound upon what this story is and just kind of go deeper into what is contained in the story, and you can lengthen that to make a full series or a movie, or you could also continue the existing story in this episode. The way that it ends is kind of a heartbreaker. It's kind of a drag, but it's also quite sweet, and it's one of those things of what would happen if that story didn't end there and continued on. It could go to some weird and really wacky places, and I think that would be interesting to watch as well. I think if you did that, it would take an audience down a really cool trail of laughs and heartbreak and conspiracy. Like, there's a lot of potential there, and that's what I've always liked about the Outer Worlds game, is the hyper corporate stuff, which we've seen now already in The Outer Worlds, and Cyberpunk does that, and Starfield has a lot of that, but adding sort of that vintage charm to the world makes it a little bit more digestible, I think. And so I think that is what is maybe the best thing about like The Outer Worlds as a product in general. So I want more of this. I don't think we'll get more of this, unfortunately, so at least we have The Outer World 2 to look forward to. So my episode score, congratulations, The Outer World. You get a 10 out of 10. I think the episode's pretty much perfect. And now for a series potential score, I think it could be a 9 out of 10. I think this could be a really good series or show or film.
Doesn't matter what I made you for. This is what you were meant for.
Mega Man Start gave me actual chills. Like, legitimately, I got goosebumps watching that. It is an absolute shame that this episode is so short. Now, normally I wouldn't take that away from like a score or a review. My policy is don't review something for what it's not, but review it or critique it for what it is. And so typically length is going to be a part of that, but legitimately I do think it hurts my soul that this is as short as it was, because after watching this episode and seeing the success of the Sonic movies, which I still have never seen, by the way, I think it's time. It is time for a Mega Man series or movie. And if we can't get that, I'd happily take a new Mega Man Legends game. Like, please give that to me. I'd play it in a heartbeat. There's just so much potential here. If this was a trailer for an upcoming movie or series and it was revealed at Comic-Con, like, bro, like that room would erupt. Man, Capcom, please, I'm begging you. You guys have been kind of knocking out of the park lately with, Okami sequel being announced, Onimusha being announced, all the success with the Resident Evil remakes. Like, bro, listen up. It's Mega Man Legends time, or it's time for us to get a film or series adaptation of Mega Man. Like, it's time. Just give Mega Man some more love. Give our boy some love, man. Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm just like now pleading. I forgot about the score. Yeah, the episode score is an 8 out of 10. It could easily be a 9 to a 10 out of 10. But legitimately, once again, it's just so short, and I feel like we could have seen so much more, and I would love to see more. So it's not going to be a full 10 out of 10, but series potential score 10 out of 10. Like, let's get the Mega Man series or movie launched, please. And this looks great. Like, let it be this. I'm more than happy with that, what we got out of this animation.
For those who voyage among the stars, time is the most precious resource.
So the greatest thing about animation is that it is a medium in which you have no limits or bounds to show, not tell. Exodus Odyssey pretty much decides to tell us everything the entire time. That's not to say the story is bad or that the world of Exodus is uninteresting. You can sense and see some of the Mass Effect DNA in the aesthetic, the music, and the choices that the character makes in this story. I'm excited to see more of Exodus. I'm intrigued. I'm a big Mass Effect fan. I loved Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. Played them, I think, last year, all three of them, just in pretty much one sitting. Well, not actually one sitting, but just in like one go. And man, they still hold up so well. And while I'm excited to see more of Exodus, this felt to me more like an extremely high budget lore video on YouTube, which I watch a lot of lore videos on YouTube because I'm a Warhammer fan, and I love those things. Like, obviously, like, clearly it's fun to get an entire story and a summarized version of it in a shorter amount of time than it would be to just like digest the actual content itself. But as for Secret Level and kind of what we're talking about here in animated shorts, an animation anthology, doing a narration for what is essentially like the story of this episode is Interstellar. Like, it's just Interstellar for the most part, but this feels like a missed opportunity because I feel like this episode is just information dump after information dump. And while I'm not going to say it's completely heartless, I think there are moments where it actually clicked and connected with me, and I thought, okay, this is pretty good. I just couldn't get over the fact that I feel like I was just being told a story or a summary of what a longer episode or series of this would be. And so because of that, the episode score is going to be a 4 out of 10, just because it, once again, it doesn't feel like it's capitalizing on the medium. It's not capitalizing on its platform. It's just, it feels like this was the pitch to the animators of, hey, this is what we want to make. And then they just kept the pitch in the episode. But other than that, like, I do think, once again, because of that, I want to see this just done where you're not telling me these things and you're letting me watch it and explore it. So series potential score, 6 out of 10, I believe. There is potential here, obviously, because it's Interstellar. Like, that's all this pretty much is. So Interstellar is a pretty solid film, and so yeah, we can this would work as a series.
Just like life. Every day, it's a new adventure.
Amidst episodes dedicated to massive franchises and IP, like Dungeons and Dragons and well, even Pac-Man, there's Spelunky here, and kudos to the studio that put this together, because this is a great representation of what Spelunky has to offer. Now, does this episode go a little heavy-handed with some of its, like, the moral of the story kind of moments? Yeah, it does, but it's completely inoffensive. It's a completely inoffensive episode, and it's quite cute in its own way. I'm not sure if there's really potential for a series in this. Now, obviously, it's kind of like it would be like Indiana Jones meets Re:Zero, which, now that I put it like that, I'm quite interested in that. So maybe that would work. But I'm not sure if the stakes of this would ever get high enough to where it would be interesting to keep on watching, or to pull you in a little bit more. Obviously, the stakes of the video games and this episode are, well, maybe my next run is the one where I get to my goal. And that's great for gaming. I'm not sure if that is necessarily great for a series or a film, but the episode's great. I really enjoyed it. I think it is a solid 7 out of 10 as an episode, and I do think the potential scores for the series is probably a little bit lower than that, with a 4 out of 10.
Come on! We gotta get out of here!
Oh, I don't even know where to start this one. Gosh. Obviously, this episode is the most complicated of the episodes, especially with the stuff around it. It's crazy to think that it's only been 3 months since Concord has released and also been shut down. Man, it feels like this was something that happened so long ago. Like, it feels like this game existed a long time ago. It's like, hey, y'all remember Concord? Oh yeah, that was yesterday. Wait, what? It's crazy with the release of this episode, the Concord secret level episode. It's hard. It's really hard to shake the feeling that PlayStation had a complete lack of self-awareness when it came to Concord, the property of Concord and the idea of Concord. The head of PlayStation right now said this is going to be our next Star Wars, or has potential to be our next Star Wars. And it's just like, man, if this tells you anything, I didn't even realize that this episode didn't follow the characters from the game, or at least like the main heroes or agents or whatever you want to call them that you play as in the game. It didn't like hit me until the end of the episode, when you see like the predominant characters, or like a glimpse of them, like towards the end. And so it's like at the end of that episode, you catch a glimpse of them, of these familiar characters from the game, and it's like they thought this would be the fan servicey hype kind of moment of like, oh, that's this character, or oh, that guy, like awesome. But you can't have fan servicey hype when you don't have fans. You can't have fan servicey hype when people don't actually care about that. And now, obviously, there are going to be some people who did connect with Concord. That I just wasn't one of those people. And so when that moment happened, and when you finally see the characters from the familiar game, or the familiar characters from the game, it did like nothing for me. I was like, oh yeah, And it made me look back at the episode a little bit worse, where I was just like, okay, well, we focus on this when a lot of the world doesn't know your characters now. Why did we do that? I don't know. I think after watching this, I have a better sense of why Concord failed. It's not just that we're overloaded with first-person shooters. Like, clearly Marvel Rivals is quite a success. It's not a first-person shooter, I get that, but competitive multiplayer game, it's quite a success. Now, I know some people would argue, well, the characters are more known in the Marvel universe than they are in the Concord universe. Sure, that's fine, and that's kind of the point. I think Concord failed because, like, it's great to have a bunch of characters that look and sound different from one another, that have their own different distinct visual identity. But when those characters don't have distinguishable personalities, it all just feels the same. Like, to me, I think every single character in this episode feels like just Star-Lord with a different, like, level of vitamin B12 intake. It's interesting that the big difference that PlayStation thought would, like, hook people in and reel people in or keep people coming back to Concord, which Concord is essentially a free-to-play multiplayer game that you have to pay for, was the fact that they believed people would be interested in the slowly pushed out story bit contents, or whenever you played the game, then you advanced in the game and got more XP and things of that nature, more story bits would be released, which is a big problem for two reasons. One, most people who play online shooters and competitive games, they probably, for the most part, just knowing my habits when it comes to playing multiplayer games, I'm trying my best to eliminate as much time between gameplay as possible. That's another, like, I'm bringing up Marvel Rivals again. That queue time right now, we saw the queue time hit 10 seconds one time, and we all were joking, okay, it's a dead game. Like, this game isn't going to last long. It's a dead game. Which is so funny, because for us, you know, like when we play Valorant or CS or something, you could be sitting there in a queue and waiting for a game for a really long time. So you're just trying to eliminate the time between clicking heads, essentially. So you're trying to eliminate as much time as possible. The second problem is your hook or your bait to differentiate yourself when it comes to Concord feels like a discount version of something else. The actual Guardians of the Galaxy game, I haven't played it. I had downloaded it and I couldn't get into it, and I want to come back to it because it is my type of game and I'm really excited for, like, a time when I could actually sit down and enjoy it. It wasn't a huge seller though. It wasn't a major success. It was a critical success and people adore that game, but how does PlayStation expect a great value version of a Guardians of the Galaxy? What made them think that people were going to clamor for that game? It's just a complete lack of self-awareness, and I think they just missed so much. And now, obviously, I've just ranted so much more about Concord as a whole than just talked about the episode. But I think that also, once again, shows the weakness of Concord as a property. And this episode is, there's so little to actually say about the content itself and not like the idea around it. Because it looked pretty. Like the colors are really vibrant, and like I think it looks really nice and it's pleasant. And the episode itself like was passable. Like, it was completely fine. It is kind of predictable in the way that it goes. I actually really like the very beginning of it. Like, kind of the setting the tone of, hey, if you're a traveler out in space, or you're someone who's traveling in space, you never quite know what's going to happen. And that was a really fun setup. It was quite comical. It did have that James Gunn sort of Guardians of the Galaxy feel. Then it kind of continued on with just the main story of the episode, and it fell so flat. Like, it was fine, but I think this episode would have been more interesting if it was worse. that's just the biggest problem for me, is it's so middle of the road. And that's what I saw with everything from Concord the game as well, is just like, this looks fine. Like, I really have no issues with it. Obviously there's a large group of people who are like, okay, go woke, go broke with this game in particular. And whether or not they're right for some of it, I just think it looks generic and bland. And so you're better off looking completely terrible than you are just looking completely soulless almost. So the episode score is a 4 out of 10. It could probably be a 5 out of 10. It's fine. Like, it is the definition of fine. But the potential score series, I have to take into account everything with Concord. It's a 3 out of 10. Could possibly be a 2 out of 10, but I don't think people want this.
Wonderful. Come in. We have a game to play.
Okay, well, first off, this is the first game that I had to Google for secret level. I had never heard of Honor of Kings. It's not something that, like, I was like, oh, I'm excited to see that because I know the game. No clue, never heard of it. Obviously never played it if I haven't heard of it. But I'll tell you, and that might factor into this, but I can't begin to tell you, I can't begin to explain how long this episode felt to me. That's not to say that it wasn't interesting. Visually, it is definitely a flex of creativity. Like, it's impressive. So credit where credit is due there. And also, Alex Lee's performance, he did a really great job as the main protagonist of this episode. But this might be the least eloquent critique I've ever given for anything. But man, this episode just had a bunch of guys yapping in it. Like, they just were yapping till their mouths fell off. I don't know how that works, but they did it. Like, everything is really good. The animation's great. I actually like the style. It's cool to see photorealistic sort of renderings in an anime style. We get that a lot with like Final Fantasy and how they do those things. I do like that aesthetic quite a bit. Everything in this episode is just a great example of how you have to earn exposition. This episode very much feels like the end of a 100-hour JRPG, where they're kind of forced to explain everything and tie up every like loose end that you came across in the game. And so they're just sitting there and you're hitting continue text after continue text after continue text, just because you're getting through every nook and cranny of the game, all wrapped up in this like 30-minute section or whatever of the game would be, before you have the 3-hour-long boss fight. But receiving answers when you don't have questions feels like a lecture. So that's really my biggest problem with this. It's presenting a bunch of answers to questions we don't have because we don't genuinely yet care of what these characters are doing or of the world. Yeah, I just felt like I was in class. I was in the classroom like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks into the semester, and I missed everything else at the very beginning, and I have no idea what we're talking about. And the professor is just lecturing and not shutting up. That's what that felt like to me. Once again, it is interesting enough and the animation is superb, but could there be more of this? I'd argue it'd be better with more. If we had a reason to get to this point of where just bros just yapping, if we could earn that, it'd be better. Do I really want that? I don't know. But once again, Alex Lee really did a great job, and I thought he was really good in this. So, episode score, it's a 6 out of 10 because it is really well done. I think it's one of the coolest animations that we've gotten, but the serious potential score, 5 out of 10, it'd be fine. Like, it's so hard to say whether or not we need more of this because what was presented was kind of such a lackluster version of what we could have gotten. It wasn't lackluster in execution, because while he's yapping, it's a lot of really cool visuals, but I'm not listening to anything you're saying, bro. I'm just looking at the cool stuff over here. So I don't know if we need more of it or not.
Wait, no, hold on. Trust me, I'm trying, but it won't hand over me.
Onto it now!
Just give it to them all.
Base Liberty, Courier.
Okay. I have so many questions. First off, what is this? Secondly, who is this for? And what exactly is the message of this, if there is even a cohesive one to tell? This episode plays like if writers of Forspoken wrote an episode of Black Mirror. It is so bland and vanilla, and it just feels like millennial writing to a T. The weird thing is it feels like a commercial for PlayStation made by people who have never touched a PlayStation, or people who hate PlayStation. Like, it's crazy watching this after playing Astrobot and seeing that Astrobot was Game of the Year and people received it really well. Obviously, it was executed incredibly. Like, Astrobot is a game with so much love and care for PlayStation's greatest franchises. And then you have this. Like, this is a complete waste of time and a complete waste of money and a complete waste of licensing PlayStation's intellectual property. This is so pointless. It's why was this what this was? Like, I get that at the end it's revealed that this is all kind of a game, and that, like, all right, all the bad people that were being presented to you, it's all a test and a challenge, because we want to see how good of a gamer you are, essentially. But it's like throwing all these characters from different PlayStation products, as well as Helldivers, which that's a little murky in how that kind of works. But there's no love for those characters, really. Like, there's no, like, there's nothing about what they do that makes them them. Like, yeah, Kratos does like this big ice attack in it, or the Helldivers talk about democracy. Okay, it's so surface level of the fan service stuff that it just fell so flat. This is the worst commercial for PlayStation that PlayStation's ever released. Like, I think it is terrible. And for that, I'm giving the episode score a 2 out of 10. At least it's cool to see those things rendered, but gosh, I don't know what they were doing here. Serious potential score is a 1 out of 10. It feels for me unethical to make it a 0 out of 10, because the idea could be there, right? The idea of pulling PlayStation characters into a world is a fun idea. This is not how that should be done at all. At all. Secret level as a whole. We've got there from episode 1 to now the final episode. And what are my final takeaways for Secret Level? The way that these were released, it shows that there wasn't any sort of intentional curation of these episodes. There wasn't an idea of, we need to curate these episodes because we want these to impact in a certain way as people are watching each individual episode and kind of getting to a whole. Nothing ramps up. It's all just these individual stories, which is what an anthology is. But you can still, like, it's the same thing of most albums are a collection of songs. Most songs, unless you're doing some sort of rock opera or something of the ilk, or some sort of overarching theme for an album, like something like Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, every album still has a flow. You still have a feel. There's a reason why a lot of the ballads reach the end of the album. These big triumphant moments hit the end of the album. It's there's an art to it. There's none of that here. Like, it's clear that they believed that everyone would just watch the episodes for video games they cared about. I don't think they thought that everyone would watch every single episode, which I suppose is okay. Like, everyone would just watch the episodes what they cared about, or for games that they know or familiar with. And it's probably true. Like, that's probably what most people did. Anyone I know who's actually watched any of these episodes, they have just watched the 1 or 2 episodes that interested them. But for anyone who watched every single episode, ending this series with product placement, the video game, the TV show, isn't what you want to see. That was such a terrible way to end a pretty good series for the most part. The Warhammer episode, the Outer Worlds episode, Armored Core, I think the Sifu episode's really good. There's other good, like pretty solid ones, and at least most of them are fine. There aren't really any episodes other than the last one that I hated. Like the Crossfire episode was one that I probably could have, I just didn't need. And once again, like the Honor of Kings one was a drag to get through, but they're all fine. Like they're all worth a watch. Like I could easily recommend this series, but to end it with that, it's just like, here's the thing. And this is how I'm going to kind of wrap this up. Secret Level being a show that's made for gamers, or a show that is made to honor the things that gamers love, you have to remember that gamers like being rewarded. They play these games, so once they get to the end, it feels like it was worth their time. Secret Level, if you're approaching it as a gamer, if you watch every single episode, your reward is the worst PlayStation commercial of all time. Like, that is a terrible way to look at a overarching product or an overarching series. Like, that is what I'm leaving with as someone who has watched every single episode, and I know I might be in the minority of that. Ain't the first time I've been a minority. But it is such a weird way to end it. Now, I'm sure the reasoning that they made these episodes release in this way is we have to release some of the good stuff up front, or else people won't check out any of the things that we finish off with at the end. And maybe that's why they put the PlayStation bit there towards the end. Maybe they put it at the end because they're like, you know what? We can't let people watch this, or we need all these other episodes to be watched before this. If people watch this first, they're going to fall off and they're not going to trust anything else that we have to offer as a series. And maybe that's why they did that. And I'm trying my best to be positive. I'm trying my best to remember how much I liked Secret Level, how much I liked so many of these episodes. But man, that left such a sour taste in my mouth, and where I'm just like, man, PlayStation right now, you should not be putting your money into things outside of just making great video games, because this was hot garbage. Between that and Concord, the Concord episode, and obviously this has been in development for a long time, and this is also kind of tied in with that Concord period of when that was being made. Y'all missed so bad with this. And I hope the success of Astrobot will show you what people actually like in your games. And that's not to say Astrobot's perfect. There are certain things about Astrobot that, once again, shows that people at PlayStation are a little bit out of touch. Really, like the climaxing moments of that game are all Horizon Zero Dawn related or Horizon related. And when you have the breadth of PlayStation IP and choosing Horizon, it's just clear that you're trying to force these things on us and force what you care about onto gamers or the customers, and it's clear that we don't care the way that you do. And you guys need to start paying attention to the consumers and be like, hey, what is it that you guys want? Because we're clearly not on the same page. And I want PlayStation to succeed. I've been as much of a PlayStation fanboy as anyone else. Like, I've spent time after time playing PlayStation game. I've covered PlayStation game stuff for forever. I would go to PlayStation Experience out in LA when they would have that. And so I love PlayStation. I really do. But man, this is just a shocking reminder of how out of touch they currently are, and hopefully that gets fixed. But PlayStation aside, Prime Video, good job for, making this happen. I think this was great for the most part. But once again, does it end with a doozy? I will say, you don't have to watch every episode. Watch what interests you. And maybe if you've watched my videos and you're saying, okay, well, Nico really liked this one, maybe give that one a try, because maybe you'll enjoy it too. Maybe you'll get something out of it if it's a game you don't know anything about. Especially like The Outer Worlds. I feel like that's a game that's a little bit... It's not a small game per se, but it's probably a game that a lot of people haven't played. And so give that episode a try, because I do think it's probably the best episode overall. So yeah, it was a fun series, but at the end of the day, it's not what I think, it's what you think. And so let me know in the comments what you think of each episode. For now, like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense. All right, take it easy.